Good evening, everyone. My name is Kashida Bedford, and tonight I will be presenting my persuasive speech on gratuity. So I want to share a story with you. So a little over a year ago, I read a story about tipping that made headline news. An Applebee's waitress presented a table of 20 with their check. When she got the check back, she noticed that someone wrote the words, "I give God 10%, why do you get 18?" This person went on to scribble out the automatic gratuity charge of 18% and wrote in a zero. Now, after receiving this no tip receipt, the waitress had a friend help her post an unedited copy of the receipt to the website readit.com as a joke. Now, as you can imagine, this story went viral, resulting in the waitress losing her job, and the guy who turned out to be a pastor was on the receiving end of numerous verbal threats and constant harassment. Now, I don't agree with his comments, but I do believe we have become a society with our hands constantly extended. I think we need to return to a system where outstanding customer service should be good enough. Here's a couple of facts for you. Did you know that tips in the United States total around $40 billion a year? Chain restaurants like IHOP pay their wait staff under minimum wage because the logic is that they'll make it up in tips. I spoke to a former IHOP employee, Jamie Martin, a former employee, and she explained to me that she only made $2.20 an hour. Each evening, her tips were recorded. The tips earned were then tallied into her paycheck, and that's how the company was able to justify only paying the employees under minimum wage. Now, I thought that was ridiculous. So I wanted to take a look and see where this whole tipping system came from. And I learned that it started in English bars around the 18th century. So these bar owners would take brass urns labeled with the phrase, "to ensure promptuity," in neutral locations around the bar. The patrons would then place money in the urn for better service, and these tips were always given in advance. Now, this practice quickly spread across the ocean, and by the late 1800s, tipping became common practice in the United States. By the 1900s, some restaurant servers actually expected tips. In fact, on June 22, 1918, close to 100 waiters were taken into custody for poisoning their clients who did not tip enough in and around Chicago. Now, on countless bookstores and websites, you can find publications and extensive charts developed by these self-proclaimed tipping experts to ensure the customers or the consumers always tip appropriately. Take a look at this slide. This is a chart that was developed by Tim Urban for the website waitbutwhy.com. His goal was to take the confusion out of tipping. So he consulted with over 100 service workers around New York City and developed this chart. Now, I don't know about you, but I think this is somewhat ridiculous and a bit of a problem. If and when a customer decides to reward his server, it should be based on the service provided, not based on what he or she was served. Here's another example. This is an example of automatic gratuity. Now, automatic gratuity has become common practice in restaurants now. If you go into a restaurant with 8 or more people, they will immediately charge you 18% for simply coming in. So how do we fix this problem? The website SeriousEats.com reported on a New York Times story that was presented on this English person by the name of Phoebe Damrosch, a European author. This author was asked the question, how can restaurants attract more professional, committed, inspired workers? And his answer was system. Restaurants in America should consider switching to the European system of service being included in the check. Now, I thought this was a great idea. This way, the restaurateurs can pay servers a steady wage. The servers will feel better about their profession and produce a better work product. Under the current system, service workers work for tips, not for their wages or customer satisfaction. See, the more money you spend in a restaurant, the larger the anticipated tip. So, the servers will always push to you, say, bottom shelf cocktails for top shelf prices, or the more expensive entrees and extra courses. And the minute you put that fork down, they're pushing you out the door so they can turn that table over and get the next group of people in. I believe by switching to a service charge system, the focus will then move from the money and back to the dining experience. With pay security, the waiters can worry less about the tip they're going to receive at the end and more about the job that they're doing. Gratuity will return to being a reward for a job well done and not a dining requirement. In New York, there's a growing number of restaurants that no longer take tips. Customers don't have to worry about how much they're going to add to their bill because the waiters won't accept the tips. Excuse me. Here's a personal story. My family and I lived in Japan for 3 years, and I can't tell you how wonderful it was to experience dinner and not have to worry about leaving a proper tip. And I'm talking about 5-star service at a local restaurant. In fact, if you attempted to leave money on the table, the servers would literally chase you down and give the money back. I know this for a fact because I tried it out for myself. So, what are your thoughts on this topic? Should gratuity be a bonus or standard practice? If you still feel it should be standard practice, consider this. How often have you gone out to dinner and felt the server was amazing, but the food was subpar? Up until recently, it was actually illegal to distribute any tip money to the cooks in California. Now, those restrictions have been loosened somewhat, but not very much. Depending upon the restaurant, a server and the cooks will typically earn about the same amount of money. But when you include the amount of tips the server will receive, you've now tripled that server's income. But the cooks still receive the same amount of money. By replacing the tipping system and with a service charge, the restaurant can redirect some of that revenue back to the kitchen staff, and you're now unifying the team and providing the customer with a better dining experience. Now let's go back to that pastor we spoke about earlier in the speech. I may not agree with his delivery, but I do agree with some of his logic. I believe eliminating tips and putting responsibility of proper compensation back in the employer's hands will make it a lot easier to provide and receive good service. Thank you for listening to my speech. I hope you got something out of it. I will talk to you later. Bye.